When you think of existentialism, you tend to think of the pale and melancholic Parisian sipping their coffee and dreading over the certainty of death. It's less likely that you'll think of the festival-packed Spanish world, where life is met with a great passion. If this is true, then it's likely you've never heard of the very interesting Spanish existentialist Miguel de Unamuno. Born in the port city of Bilbao, located in the Basque Country, Unamuno grew up in the midst of great violence. He witnessed the murderous conflict between the traditionalists and progressive forces, peaking during the siege of Bilbao. These events would greatly shape his own political views, and he would embrace nonviolence for much of his life. Unamuno would go on to study philosophy and letters at the University of Madrid. His dissertation explored the history of his own Basque ancestors and highlighted an interest in the Basque language he had first developed as a child. Unamuno was also quite religious at this point in his life. However, while studying in Madrid, he began to visit the library of Ateneo, or the Blasphemy Center, which held several books that put the existence of God into question. Unamuno himself would begin to experience a crisis of faith that would last many years. After he received his doctorate, he returned to Bilbao and promptly launched a socialist journal called La Lucha de Clases, cementing his views as a leftist thinker. He would also marry in 1891 and father 10 children. In the late 1890s, his religious crisis peaked, and he concluded that an explanation for life and the existence of God were futile issues to attempt to uncover. From this, he turned inwards to examine spiritual struggles and the existential situation of man in general. Around this time, Unamuno served as the rector of the University of Salamanca. While there, he oversaw many civil wars and movements. At one point, he was even exiled to the Canary Islands for his dissenting opinions. Thankfully, after the dictatorship of Rivera, he was able to return and found himself as one of the authors of Spain's Second Republic. However, the people's hopes for a country governed by the people first was soon crushed with the rise of Franco. Unamuno initially welcomed Franco's revolt as he felt that Spanish tradition was threatened by the rise of progressivism. However, after encountering much of the racism and brutality demonstrated by Franco's regime, Unamuno sided with neither the Republic nor Franco. Infamously, he had a public fight with the Francoist military commander Milan Astre shortly before he was placed under house arrest and then died from the inhalation of gases from a brazier. Today's video is sponsored by Blinkist. If you're like me, you probably have long lists of books that you want to read. Sometimes I like to take my time with books, but for others, and especially with balancing school and work, I really just don't have the time. Fortunately, there's Blinkist, which condenses entire books and, more importantly, powerful ideas into just 15 minutes of the most important highlights. Blinkist lets you save time, money, and helps you discover and understand the world around you faster than ever. Personally, I use Blinkist before bed or when I'm doing my errands. Right now, I'm listening to Matthew Ricard's Happiness, which is an amazing book I'd recommend to everyone. I especially appreciated his reframing of happiness from a state or experience of pleasure, which is a pretty mainstream idea of happiness, to being happy as something to be practiced, as an art. Blinkist has over 3,000 non-fiction books, 14 million active users, and lets you access all of your titles well offline. Now there's also shortcasts that condense popular podcasts to the heart of each episode. Click on the link below and the first 100 people will get unlimited access for 1 week to try it out. This is a 7-day trial that is completely free and that you can cancel at any time. You'll also get 25% off if you want the full membership. Miguel de Unamuno's work is best characterized by his embrace of the irrational. He strongly believed that understanding and reason led to nothing more than despair, whereas faith allowed one to truly live as a human being. From this, Unamuno would regularly embrace paradox and inconsistency in life, finding them to be the hallmarks of human existence. His embrace of the irrational is also evident in his overall philosophy, which avoids systems and absolutes in favor of negating all affirmations and potential truths. He avoided any attempts at boring and clear classification. For example, he would write Niebla, which followed an irrational and self-referential narrative typical of the modernist era. He insisted that Niebla was a novella rather than a novel or novella because it wasn't fixed and remained ambiguous. He would also use poetry to demonstrate his love for the irrational, grappling with more open-ended and spiritual issues in his many works. Even with God, he believed that faith could only come through irrational rather than rational conviction. Those who believe in God, but without passion in the heart, without uncertainty, without doubt, and even at times without despair, believe only in the idea of God and not in God himself. Unamuno is, as previously mentioned, an existentialist first and foremost. This is in part due to his embrace of the absurd. He believed that life was tragic because of the knowledge that we will die, and that much of our daily lives are spent in an attempt to survive after our death, in some symbolic sense, whether that be belief in salvation or raising one's status in society. This desire for immortality extends to our friends, family, and the things that we love. Although this is an irrational desire, he also believes that this is a desire that makes us truly human, and out of this conflict between our existential desire for immortality and the cold finality of all things, a belief in God is formed. Although he isn't well known today, Unamuno's work is an important step in modernist and existential thinking. Hopefully his work will one day make its return to the spotlight.